Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Turin here with another Warhammer Total War online commentary. In this particular battle, I'm going to be playing the Dwarves against the Vampire Counts. So as far as my army composition goes, I kind of have a bit of a strange composition today, and again, part of this is due to popular request, but I am indeed using 3 groups of Rangers over here who are doing a little bit of a tactical deployment, and I will definitely get into that shortly. As far as my main army composition goes, I do have Longbeards kind of mixed in with Longbeards with Great Weapons in the front line. I kind of like this synergy, because again, if you just bring the Longbeards with Great Weapons, they do have relatively low melee defense, and against units like Cryptors and against fodder units, they're not going to do as well as the regular Longbeards would. So Longbeards, regular group here, Great Weapon here, and then in the center I actually have the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass, who I really like in the Vampire matchup, simply because not only do they just have outstanding stats across the board with an anti-infantry bonus, but on top of that, they also do a flame attack, which is really good against Cryptors and units, like that who take additional fire damage. So that's pretty much it for my front line. In my secondary line, I do have a Runesmith here, a Rune Lord over here with all of the goodies, and then another Runesmith here. So Runesmiths are just very good against Vampire Counts, especially if they decide to bring ethereal units or anything like that. And thankfully for me, it looks like my opponent did bring some Hex Wraiths, and I think he has another group around here somewhere. It looks like some Cairn Wraiths over there, so good stuff so far. I do have a regular group of Slayers, and then I have the Grumbling Guard, who undoubtedly, despite the matchup, if you have like an infantry corps of any type, I think they should be included. And they have that nice aura. It is called the Old Grumblers, I believe, and it does have a pretty nice sphere of influence. You can see it reaches 45 meters. So if you guys look right now, let's see if we can get, you see that blue outline going around my army? That is the sphere. So everything it's hitting in that radius is going to get this benefit, and essentially will stay fresh for almost the entire battle, which is really nice. So huge fan of this particular unit. And then of course the Dragonback Slayers, if I didn't already mention them. So these guys are great. They do have a charge defense, good stats, just all around, cool unit against the Vampire Counts. It does well against Cryptors, does well against heroic units. It can deal with Cav pretty well. Just a solid choice, in my opinion. So on paper, this would look like, your traditional, DAWI Death Star, right? I mean, if I were to see this army coming at me as the Vampire Counts, I probably wouldn't think twice. And that's something you definitely kind of want to consider when you're kind of meshing your armies. If you want to make it look convincing, if you're going to be using a Ranger build. So again, this looks like just a regular Death Star army, and on paper this might be all that I'm bringing, but unfortunately for my opponent, that is not the case. And I got the Secret Agent DAWIs over here. They're going in and they're sneaking around the flank. So I do have 3 groups of Rangers. Now, Rangers are definitely some good utility, and one of the downsides against Vampire Counts of bringing missile units in your primary formation is that they're just going to summon zombies on top of you, and you're not going to be able to do that much. But in bringing Rangers and kind of sneaking them around and perhaps deploying them behind the opponent's army, you can actually get an advantageous situation in which it's going to be a little bit tricky for them to get the zombies. Granted, they can still be shut down, but I'm just trying something a little fun today, guys. And these guys, pretty good stats across the board. Low armor compared to Coilers, but again, they can do really good work against Cryptors, Mortis Engines, things like that have pretty low armor. So as far as my opponent's army goes, he does have the Hex Wraiths over there. Looks like a single group, and then a front line of Graveguards with Great Weapons, which is pretty standard, good against the Dwarves, armor piercing, and pretty much all Dwarvish units aside from like Rangers and their ilk do have heavy armor. He does have a secondary line of Cryptors, which again are another really great choice, and Cryptors do really good against Longbeards with Great Weapons and Dwarf Warriors with Great Weapons with most type of units. But, the regular Dwarf Warriors, especially the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass, as well as these missile units, are going to trade pretty well with these bad boys. On top of that, he does have Vlad von Karstein back here, and he does have a group of Cairn Wraiths over here. So Cairn Wraiths are one of those units that if you're going to bring them against the Dwarves, it's kind of like a check, keeping them honest, because if they just bring like one Runesmith, it can be kind of hard to deal with multiple groups of ethereal units as the Dwarves. But granted, High King Thorgrim does do magic damage, so it's still a bit of a risky pick in my opinion. Over here, he does also have some Black Knights. So Black Knights are just kind of cheap fodder cav, just decent for disrupting the back line. They're not going to do, devastating damage by any means, but still, it's another threat that I have to worry about. So without further ado, let's get right into the battle. So the Vampire player is marching right down the pipe, and I am doing the exact same thing. At the same time, my Secret Agent DAWI squad is sneaking around the back line, and I definitely, when I saw these guys coming, I got really concerned that they were going to like come right at these guys, and I honestly probably would have just lost the game if that was the case, if he was to discover this, because this is a very ballsy Vanguard deployment here. I'm literally sneaking around, and it looks like they were revealed for some reason, but my opponent, it says they're still hidden, so I don't think my opponent saw them, or maybe he saw them for a split second and didn't notice, but thankfully for me, it worked out pretty well. So again, I just want to sucker him into this giant engagement here, and I guess it's not really suckering him in, it's just kind of the inevitable battle that we're going to have here, but I wanted the fighting to start so then I could sneak my Secret Agent squad around, and you can see now they're cutting in and getting ready to position back here and then shoot into the main battle line, so it's definitely going to be very heated. You can see Vlad von Karstein is charging up, the Cryptors are just posturing up behind these Graveguards, so they want the Graveguard to go in, do the initial charge, and then have these guys follow up with their charge bonus of 30, and their heavy hitting stats. So And at the same time, he does have these Hex Wraiths in the back. He's kind of just lurking back here waiting. You can see my Runesmiths are popping all of their defensive runes, and in the front line, the fighting has started. So the Graveguard here have engaged the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass, and you can see the Cryptors coming in as well. Definitely going to be a very, very heated battle. And the Cryptors are just such a great unit against the Dwarves. I mean, they hit extremely hard. They do splash damage, if I'm not mistaken, and they also do have poison. So you can see they're getting in there and doing some pretty good work. But these guys are very, very resilient. You can see despite all that kind of theatrics of them getting knocked around, they've only lost 3 models so far. They do have the Rune of Negation for the damage mitigation, and are doing pretty well over here. So again, the Cryptors are spread pretty evenly across, but the Longbeards they're holding it down, to say the least. And the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass are, again, they were defending the flank a little bit, but I didn't want them engaging on these guys. And I did then see the Black Knights coming around the flank. So what I did is I pulled the Dragonback Slayers up through the forest, and I wanted to use them to engage these Black Knights before I pulled my Rangers in, because now the Rangers are very, very, I guess in a bad position with these guys being out and about on the field. So the Dragonback Slayers are definitely on their covert mission to go help them out over there. The Rune Lord in here is just using his Perpetual Runes. You can see the Master Rune of Oath and Steel going down, which again will be okay, but my opponent does have a lot of armor piercing, so the bonus armor isn't going to be as big. But over here, the Slayers have kind of saturated the line and helping out with these Cryptors and other units. Thankfully, my opponent did park his Black Knights for a second, and he reacted a little bit late here. So the Dragonback Slayers are going to engage, and they're just going to put these guys down. They do have very high weapon strength of 48. Granted, these guys do have 80 armor, but now the Rangers have come out of hiding, and they're going to start peppering these guys and doing a pretty good job. Even if they detach, 3 full groups of Rangers is just going to crumble these guys so quickly, because they do have, shields, but 80 armor, these guys with that kind of volume of just firepower is just going to shut these guys down. So you can see those Black Knights get crumbled, and that was essential to my strategy, because then it opens up the back door for my Rangers to come in and flank. In this kind of sustained melee combat, it would be very tough to win, I think, in the long run, simply because, the Cryptors and other units like that are going to trade very effectively. So, again, I had a lot of marbles riding on these guys, and my opponent does have some other cam race that he was pushing towards my Rangers, and I do intercept them with the Dragonback Slayers. Thankfully, on that same coin, the Rangers are finally starting to shoot into these Cryptors here and just have free range. So all 3 groups of my Rangers are kind of uninhibited, just firing, just having fun, and doing their thing. My opponent did get a pretty good charge here with the Hex Race, but unfortunately for him, the Ethereal units don't do so well here, because again, as you see, they're down to 28 models, they're already crumbling, and that's simply from a Rune of Wrath and Ruin. And if you look at the power bar, my opponent does have actually a slight favorable situation, but as his kind of Ethereal units start to, dissipate through the rune warfare, I guess you could say, the power bar is definitely going to go in my favor. And now that these Rangers are kind of back in action, they're doing a really good job just peppering these Cryptors. And you can see their HP is starting to tank, their binding is weak, and over here this group is taking a beating as well. So finally I'm starting to get some HP damage on these guys. You can see a single Rune of Wrath and Ruin over here brings these guys just downtown. And the Dragonback Slayers, this is obviously a pretty terrible situation, but I had to block these guys. I had to keep them from getting to my Rangers, because this is one of my lifelines for dealing with these Cryptors who, again, are getting that invocation from the heck and are definitely very, very sustainable. Thankfully, my troops still are steady. They're getting those perpetual leadership buffs from the Rune Lord, as well as the 2 Runesmiths, so that's definitely keeping them in the battle. But in this particular flank over here, my troops are definitely collapsing. You can see, I have a few Slayers and a few Longbeards here, but there's not many left. My opponent has a pretty overwhelming number of Cryptors over here, and, this Runesmith definitely, kind of stomping the yard doing his thing, but still, it's a very, very pitched fight over here. More in the center, I have a much better situation going on. You can see the Cryptors are starting to take a beating from that missile fire. Also, they are taking fire damage from the Grumbling Guard here, not the Grumbling Guard, excuse me, the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass. So that fire damage is really, really laying into these guys, which is great. The Rune Lord here also doing pretty well. I mean, he has 200 plus weapon strength himself, which isn't, the best as it goes, for heroic units, but still, he's doing a very, very good job laying the smackdown on these low armor units. Over here on the far side, it's definitely a very, very tough battle. Again, like the other side, my opponent is definitely doing well in the flanks, but still those Rangers have been focusing on the middle and outside and are starting to destroy these Cryptors finally, which is very, very essential to my victory here. He did detach a group of these Graveguards with great weapons here, and you can see the Dragonback Slayers are running with their axes out. Man, there's few things I enjoy more than this game than a Slayer charge. It's just one of the most gratifying things by far. So the Slayers are coming in here. Hopefully they can catch them, but you can see the I'm so used to using Quarreler, but the Ranger fire is just putting these guys down. Probably a bit of friendly fire going on, but I really wanted to keep these guys alive because they were kind of, again, like I've mentioned several times in this cast, one of my few lifelines at dealing with the Cryptors. So the Slayers get in here and they're able to crumble these guys, and that was a great situation. So now my Rangers are back online, there's no threats facing them, and I should be able to clean up the main force of the battle. So you can see the power bar is starting to go back in my favor as these Cryptors are just taking an absolute firing from these guys. So they're going down to critical binding, they're now crumbling. Their models are still at 7 or 8, but they're going to start rapidly crumbling, as are most of his troops. So you can see across the line, everything is starting to wither and dissipate. He does have Vlad von Karstein, who is still strong binding despite the circumstances, but the army losses haven't hit him yet. And now that my back line is secure, the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass are going to get in here, and they're just going to... Not Warriors, get those guys confused. The Dragonback Slayers are going to get in here and just absolutely dumpster these guys. You can see they just get put down almost instantly, and the DAWI are cheering, and things are going good. let's go ahead and take an overhead view of everything. Cryptors are in, pretty bad shape. Only 2 models left here. These guys are in critical binding as well, and these guys are also in very, very bad shape. And this is always a good sign when you're in a battle like this, and you can see that the Rangers, they're all, almost out of ammo, which is a great sign. A little bunched up, a little bit awkwardly. I probably should have spread them out. I wonder if that was actually affecting their firing, but still, they're all almost out of ammunition, which is a great, great sign. This Rune Lord over here still just handling business, man. He was fighting over there for, most of the battle just by himself after, a lot of his friends were slain, unfortunately. But still, he's doing a good job. Vlad von Karstein probably going to start crumbling due to army losses here, so we'll go ahead and just fast forward through the rest of this because, again, it's just the Rangers finishing off the Cryptors and, of course, Vlad crumbling due to army losses. So hope you guys enjoyed that one. It was a lot of fun for me. Definitely looking forward to, using Rangers more in some builds. But, again, it's one of those things that, I guess, granted this game, did have a competitive element to it, but a lot of people, especially since, big YouTubers like Arab Carthage have been, playing the videos of this, people are probably going to start expecting it more, especially if they see an army like mine that may be suspiciously small. They might start looking or at least scanning the periphery for them, which, definitely could be scary. But, in bringing Vlad, he's very durable, but he doesn't have that, flying presence where he can go and spam zombies wherever he likes. That's one of the reasons, I've been using Manfred quite a bit when I play. But still, the Rangers did well. Definitely adds a very dynamic element to the Dwarves, which is great. So very cool stuff, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. The Slayers did well. Rangers did pretty good, obviously, against the Cryptors. These guys held it down. I mean, they were essentially just holding the line, allowing my, bigger units to really lay the smackdown. A lot of the kills and kind of damage did come from the Rune of Wrath and Rune, as well as the Master Rune. As far as my opponent's army goes, I think the Cairn Wraiths and the Hex Wraiths were just a huge kind of missed investment. Honestly, if he had just cut those Hex Wraiths and, there's just so many different things he could have done. I mean, even some fodder units or, a Mortis engine, if he was able to protect it with zombie spam, could have been better. Definitely would have been very draining in my front line. I mean, there's a multitude of different things, but I don't like these type of units. I feel like it's just against the Dwarves with the popularity of Runesmiths. I feel like it's a big liability. But anyways, very well played to my opponent, Mozilla Firefox. I look forward to seeing you again on ladder and hope you guys enjoyed this DAWI cast. Have an excellent night and take care.